norms and stereotypes to making sure that the butts are wet. Boy, girl, mom and dad want grown-up time, you're going mad. It's a trip, but we'll guide you through with tips and tricks for boys and girls too. Fathers, be good to your daughters. Daughters will love like you do.
Why are we singing, John Mayer?
Because today's episode is on raising sons and daughters. Raising sons versus daughters, however you want to say it.
Versus makes me think of like Mortal Kombat.
Pow, pow. Anyway, before we get into that, welcome back. Nick and I are refreshed. Well, I mean, you're just here after last week, or maybe you're new. Welcome back. Nick and I took a little bit of a hiatus, like a week without recording, which is not something we do right now, just because we're pumping out weekly episodes for you. But we were in Texas seeing family, but also seeing friends, and it was hot.
Too hot.
We're back.
It's hot here.
It's
20 degrees hotter in Texas.
Yeah. Our high is like 85 today or something like that.
Yeah. It's 106 where we just came from, 108 in nearby cities.
Mm-hmm. And just people are always like, it's hot, whatever, that's not that bad in that voice, exactly. But I mean, think about it. We don't have central AC. A lot of people in LA don't, or in California in general, don't have central AC. So you're looking at that. And then also there's not a lot of shade trees. I love palm trees, but they do not offer a reprieve from the sun.
No, and if they do, it's like a little like 10-foot circle.
Yeah. So anyway, we're glad you're here. We're feeling refreshed and ready to go.
Let's go.
Wait, I had one thing I wrote down that I wanted to share. It's just like a memory. Is I was in middle school whenever Daughters came out, John Mayer, and I remember my friend Taylor like wrote all of the lyrics on her Converse in like science class one day in Mr. Carter's chemistry class. And that's just like I don't know if I'd call it a core memory, but it's like one of the memories that I remember. It's that I liken like songs when they came out to like what I was doing. Like I think of Maroon 5 songs about Jane, like in Spanish class. I don't know.
You don't think of like 5 different shades of red?
No. Thank you for that. Anyway.
I think John Mayer would be happy that one of your core memories is someone writing his lyrics on a shoe.
Yeah. Yeah. Or
we should have told him when we saw him in concert.
Yeah. Anyway, another housekeeping thing. Last week, we recorded an episode 15, on controversial things we did as parents. And one thing that I forgot to say that people definitely think is controversial when we tell them is we don't get the twins when they wake up in the morning. So they wake up usually around 6:30 and we go get them at 7:30. And, they might cry sometimes. We check them on our cameras. We have the outlet like screen monitor so we can check them anywhere. And we make sure nothing happened. Like the other day though, or actually it was just yesterday, Nick usually gets them in the morning and I got them yesterday because he was at a Bible study. But I heard Olive like scream at the top of her lungs, and she's not usually like a crier, especially in the morning. And I could see that Cypress had taken her sleep sack. And so like I went to go get it and give it back to her. And then I left the room and that was around 6:30. And I don't know. I see people which is fine, who are like, oh, our day started earlier. The baby got up earlier. And, we did that more, I think, when they were not sleeping through the night, that type of thing, when it was just like feeding every several hours. But we don't go get them.
I don't know that it's been a conscious choice, but you're correct. We don't get them. I think it might change when they're like out of the cribs and they're able to like get up and open doors and stuff, which we're close to. But
yeah, but I see it. We haven't talked about this. I see us doing the light system. Do you know what I'm talking about? Where when it turns green, they can come out of their room, because it's kind of what we do now. Again, we get them at 7:30 just because it will throw off our day. And it's sometimes it's okay to have your day thrown off, but if nothing's wrong or they're just like playing, then we don't go get them.
Yeah.
Until the day starts and we're ready to go get them.
Have we talked about the expression "day thrown off"?
No.
I'm not a fan. I know it's not your expression. We can talk about it another time.
Okay, Nick. He also doesn't like "it is what it is," which I can understand more, but "day thrown off." I guess you're saying
that one makes me angry.
I know.
That's a different thing.
I know. I'm more saying
day thrown off. I know what you're saying. I think,
but it's my decision if my day is thrown off, right? Okay. Is that what you're gonna say?
No.
What were you gonna say?
It was close to that. What I was gonna say is, your day is not necessarily thrown off if it doesn't go the way you expect. So the expression "my day is thrown off" suggests that your day has been ruined by something that didn't go as planned, which is not always the case. It can be.
Yeah, that's honest. I'm not gonna say it's really easy for you to say, but I feel like you just like bounce back from things, and I need a minute to just not be upset anymore. Not that I'm talking about in general in life. You are able to kind of like flip a switch and be like, okay, that's over. And I'm just like, I need a minute. I'm not gonna.
Sure, but I'm not telling you to not feel like it's stressful. What I'm saying is if you choose to say, oh, my day's ruined now in the morning because one thing happened differently, that's different than you feeling something and
True,
not
and
being able to bounce back.
I didn't say ruined because I feel like that's a little bit more harsh.
So do you not think thrown off is like a negative term?
It is, but it cannot be negative, and I don't think my day is ruined. It's not off to the start I expected.
When I hear thrown off, that's what I think, but maybe you're not.
I think you're just taking it to the extreme because I don't necessarily mean that. And, you know, a lot of the time if I'm frustrated, it's because maybe I'm already running late or I didn't do something for myself. And so it's just when you're taking care of tiny humans or other things pop up, your day can be thrown off without kids.
Yeah.
It's just harder to come back from. I don't know. Sometimes I'm able to bounce back, but yeah. Anyway, that's just something else that we do. You should go listen to the whole episode though. It's a fun one. Are you ready for the TIFF?
So ready.
Did you already read it?
Nope.
Okay, so today's TIFF I picked, and it's about, I don't think we've done it before, but if we have, we haven't done it in this aspect for sure. It's like a clean as you go or a clean after. So Nick's laughing. The first example I will give is like cooking breakfast. You know, it's not to say Nick doesn't clean. He does. 100% does. Are you boo-sawing over there? But you know, I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna clean this pan real fast. And we do like soak some things sometimes, so that makes sense. But in the non-soakable items, you know, we're just different in that aspect. But in another way, besides the kitchen, I would explain it, is if you're in the room with the twins, like right before they go to bed, or if I'm in the room, like by ourselves or together, we have different approaches. And I think it matches how we are in the kitchen. When they're playing, I'm probably picking up. And
while they're playing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And not like taking it from them, but like they're not using this toy, so I'm going to go ahead and like clean up. And I think that it's not like I'm cleaning up for them. Whenever we're like actively cleaning up together, I make sure they like, you know, put a puzzle in the piece or whatever, just to make sure they're learning like people don't clean up for them. That's not what I'm saying here. They're not 100% at that age yet where they can do it. But yeah, I kind of like clean as I go, and then the room looks pretty good by the time that it's time to go to bed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm silently judging him.
I know what you're doing. You go ahead and tell everybody. We're in the nursery.
We're
looking around right now because Papa Nick put the kids to bed.
Yeah.
And we're looking around to see if Lauren's hypothesis is valid.
It was just harder.
And not everything's put away, but most of it is, and we're able to live
I don't know.
in this room.
Have you ever seen how our nanny puts away stuff?
Yes.
She's amazing.
It is an unattainable standard.
She's amazing. She's so good.
She will be on soon.
I am not. Yes, that she's going to be our first guest. It's going to be awesome. I'm not even as good as her, but I strive to be. And like, you know, right now I'm looking at these puzzles, which we love this puzzle, but like last night we couldn't find all the puzzle pieces.
Can you say that once more? Last night what?
Oh,
both of us.
I came in
interesting
at the end, right? Like to hug them goodnight and kiss them goodnight.
And you helped clean up, and we couldn't find the letters together.
Well, at that point it was time to go to bed, and I wasn't going to like find the time to do it. But I also like am pretty like pay attention. And granted, sorry, I'm just making a whole bunch of noise in here and not talking into the microphone. I'm not calling you out because I do the same thing when we're in here, but it's not like you were playing with the toy with them. They were independently playing. And so it's not like you're...
But this gets into a different thing where you expect a little bit in your mind that if you're resting, you should be working. And
I know.
If I'm in here with them, whether I'm actively playing with them or not, I don't feel like I have to be actively working. Yeah.
And I'm not saying you have to. I'm just saying like the after effect of it is what I'm thinking of. So like when I prep things at night, or even you've started to prep things at night, like whenever you go to the gym, you pack your bag the night before, which is great because it definitely makes it easier to go in the morning, which you kind of come to that side of it. But I think
I've met in the middle.
Yeah,
I
I
think
know.
there's happy middle ground, happy medium.
Yeah, but I don't know. This feels different than when I leave the room. And so for me, it
It
affects
is.
my mental health. Whereas you, I don't think it does. You come to like my side of it. Like whenever we arrived back in LA on Wednesday, when we walked into our apartment, I was like, this is nice. Because we
Yeah.
spent the time to really like prep it before we left. And it was really nice to come home to and didn't feel chaotic.
So I would not say that enjoying a clean area is your side.
Mm-mm.
I've never wavered on that. I always
I know.
enjoy things that are more clean. What I don't typically do well is trade off the leisure time or the relaxation time for something to be perfectly clean every single time. And I especially don't like to sacrifice when I'm having a good time just to clean. So, like for me, yes, this is slightly annoying. Would I like it to be cleaner? Yeah. But I also think back to last night, the 2 hours I was in here, I was able to play with them without thinking about cleaning up toys. Not to say that that's better. I'm just, that's the choice that I make in my mind is like, if I'm turning around and putting letters back in the thing, I'm also not playing with the doll and Olive. You know what I mean? So to me, it's like the same thing as opening your phone and not paying attention to them. That's what it feels like to me. I'm not saying it is, but that's what it feels like to me. The kitchen is a whole different thing. You're glaring at me.
Well, again, I don't know how to say it because it sounds like I'm calling you out because it's fine. But when they're independently playing and you're not playing with them is what I'm saying. Like, that's also.
You're expecting that I'm working during
No,
that
no,
time.
I'm just saying for me, I will do little bits at time so it's easier at the end. And then it's also easier today whenever we go into the weekend and it's kind of still in disarray and we have to work harder. I like to work smarter, not harder. And like that includes keeping the momentum. I don't know. You can, did you,
So the kitchen's a different thing. The
yeah.
kitchen is, it quite actually gets in my way when somebody is cleaning around me in the middle of me cooking. So like clicking. As an example, like, and this is not to call out your parents, it was an accident, but like your dad does the same thing. He cleans up while he while he cooks,
Yeah.
right? I was like baking or something. I had like butter. Or no, this wasn't your dad. I'm sorry. This was at our lake weekend. This is one of our friends.
Oh,
And like they were doing the same thing, cleaning around me. And like I had a piece of like the butter paper out on the counter on purpose because I was using a stick of butter to line a bowl and I was going to put it back there. And then I went back and it was gone and it was in the trash can. It's because somebody came and cleaned up around me, but I had a plan. So like, this isn't a professional kitchen, but there's a reason that the dishwashing station is always away from the kitchen and the dishwashers do not come into the cooking area. They wait for something to come to them, then they take care of it. So that's my same philosophy is like, as well as we're in tune, you don't know what I'm doing in the kitchen as well as I do.
yes,
Same thing.
chef.
No, yeah. The same thing if you were cooking, I don't know your plan as well as you do in your mind, right? So if I'm cleaning around you, even though I have virtuous intent and I'm trying to help, I could also be messing up your system, which is why like I put things in the sink. You think I'm just stacking to never do it again, which is old me.
No, I don't think you're doing that.
I know,
Okay.
but like I'm intentionally setting it out of my space because I know I don't need it anymore. I don't have time to clean it right then, but it's out of my cooking area. So now I have more space to do everything else and cook. And when I'm done cooking, I clean everything.
This makes sense, and I think it definitely explains like your take on when to clean it. But I was really just talking about solo work, like when like if I'm cooking by myself, like okay, the things in the oven, I can clean this while I'm doing it, or like this will take 2 seconds and I can go ahead and get it cleaned. That's just I think where we're
I do
different.
that too. If I have the free moments and I'm in the kitchen, I do that too. But usually I'm doing a ton at once and I don't have that free second. So like I thought you were comparing like putting off my next cooking step to clean up something I've just finished.
No, I don't do that.
Yeah.
I use the time. Like if something goes in the oven, I'm like, okay, I can use this
Yeah,
time to do this.
I do
type of
that.
thing.
Like if my tortilla is warming up in the toaster, like I'll clean the pan that I had just put in the sink and then move on to the next step. Yeah. I don't only want to clean when I'm done. That's just the way I prefer to operate unless I have time. If I have
and
time,
I
I'll do it.
don't prefer to operate that way. It's where things is a difference. But anyway, let us know if you're a clean as you go or if it affects your mental health or
Let us know
whatever.
if somebody takes your butter paper. Shout out to our friend that did that. I still love you, and you know that I'm not mad at you.
Honestly, butter paper is such like an underrated like use because I'll use it to like line.
Technically, it's wax paper. Typically, it's wax paper or I'm not correcting you. I'm just saying for people who are listening, it's either wax paper or what's the other one?
Parchment.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying like you can use it to rub the extra butter that's on there to cake pans and stuff is where I like to use it.
Yeah. So if you take it off of a stick of butter, you can use the paper itself.
No, I don't use the paper. I wipe the paper on the cake pan to grease the pan.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not baking it with it in there.
No, I was trying to describe the same thing. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, cool. There's your little fun fact there. Originally, I had this episode back to back with our boy mom versus girl mom culture episode, and I forgot what number that is, but you can go back and listen to it. It's a really good episode if I do say so myself. But we needed a break, I felt like, in between that, because it's a similar topic but different, because today we're focusing on the children.
Yeah.
But when I was doing that, I was thinking about like what my favorite episode has been to not necessarily record, but to listen back to, because I don't listen to them back until they're live. And honestly, I think the one I got the most out of personally was episode 11, which was having kids made me loosen up. Do you know what yours has been? Which your favorite has been?
Oh, I was not prepared to answer this question. Favorite is different than the one I appreciated the most. I think the one I appreciated the most is when we were talking about, I don't remember which episode it was, when I was talking about defending Olive. That whole conversation.
That was the boy mom versus girl mom.
Yeah. I think that was a good one for me to
tease. He cried at the end if you want to go back and listen.
I'd love to call that out.
Well, it's a teaser.
Yeah. If people want to see me cry. Yeah, that was probably the one I got the most out of, because it was kind of like a therapy session in a vacuum, or not a vacuum, in compressed therapy session where like I could talk through a lot of that stuff. I think the most fun one for me so far is probably the one we were talking about travel a little bit.
Oh, traveling with twins.
Yeah.
Or traveling with kids, even twins. That was one of the earlier ones.
The little stories about like the people typically want to help you when they're around you, and how you can help people who have busy families around you when you see them struggling, or see if they need help or whatever, like that kind of stuff I like. And I also like the travel piece.
Mm-hmm.
And we're trying to plan this Europe trip, so hey, I'm just travels.
You're just thinking. Mind. Honestly, I really liked our first episode too. It was a really good one. We touched on a lot.
Was that the first episode?
No, I was saying I also
skipping.
Period. I also really liked the first episode we did. It was a good, fun one. Just asked a bunch of questions. But on to today's episode, raising sons versus daughters. I wanted to talk about initially why we picked this one, or what sparked this episode in it of itself. And first of all, this episode comes out the week of my birthday, so I thought it'd be fun also since I'm a daughter. And this next thing I'm about to say, I'll just go ahead and say it. So what sparked it was the Marvelous Mrs. Maisle show. It's on Amazon Video. It's very good if you want to go check it out. It has ended, so you can binge watch the whole thing. But this was in season 5, episode 8, which I believe was the last episode. And this doesn't give anything away.
Let's say spoiler alert just in case.
Yeah, if you don't want to hear it, then you can just like fast forward. It's just a quotation that her dad said. And he says, "I didn't take my daughter seriously. What could she have been if I had helped her? I paid attention to my son. My daughter is a remarkable person, and I don't know if I ever said that to her." And I was just like, wow, what a thing to realize. And I don't relate to it because my dad didn't pay attention to whatever. My dad did pay attention to me, and I feel like enabled me, as well as my sister and my mom, to like do what I wanted to do, and that I could do anything. So I don't feel that aspect of it, but I just thought it was cool because, and the show is set in the, not right now, I can't remember what, it's not the 60s.
Yeah, it's like the 50s, I think.
Yeah, and so like it was a different time for women, and so I think it fits with the time. But her dad has this epiphany, and I just thought it was a really sweet for him to say and to realize. And obviously I'm not giving away like how he gets to this thought, and I think that's why I didn't give away anything for me, but I understand if you don't want any part of the show, I get it. But old thoughts, and some people still think that way, of just like the son has everything, because the son would get the inheritance and is carrying on the family name, but like daughters have things to offer too, and are just as good.
Yeah, so the context I think that's necessary here is that he, as a father, had an expectation that his son would carry on a specific trait and a specific great skill set. And was frustrated when he realized that his son, by his perception, didn't have that skill set, but was also not really considering, one of my other children may have it. Not to say that you can always pass down whatever you're proud of, but like the point was he had a higher expectation and a greater weight of expected success on his son than he did his daughter.
It wasn't his son. I don't want to give anything away, but it wasn't his son that
Sorry,
made
his
him realize.
grandson.
Okay, there we go. If you hopefully skip this, if you're,
we said spoiler alert.
I know, but I just wasn't going to say that. Yeah, it was about his grandson, but and then that made him reflect on his own children and just like how he could have given her more attention, and just like she was able to flourish and do all these things and be amazing on her own right.
Right.
Anyway, that's just what basically made me want to do this episode, just kind of speak to both, since we have both. But honestly, this episode is good for anybody, whether you don't have kids or you have all girls or you have all boys or you have girls and boys. It's just interesting, in my opinion, to talk about it. And this past weekend, we actually had a friend ask us if it was different loving our son and loving our daughter. And at first I said, yes, it is different. But then I thought about it and I was like, wait, it is different, but I don't think it's different because one's a boy and one's a girl. It's different because they're two different people. And I think having more than one child, you will love them, like regardless of if they're a boy or a girl. If they're both girls, if they're both boys, you're going to love them differently because they're two different people. Just like you love people differently. I mean, your kids are an extension of you, so it's a little bit different, but they're different people.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's this expectation that there's like a love rank or something with your kids. Like when people say love differently, what my mind snaps to is like, oh, you love one more than the other. And I know that's not what you're saying.
No.
But yeah, I mean, different, it actually means different. Like the love looks different. It's not better or worse.
But it's because they're two different people, not because if they're a boy or a girl. And in one of the earlier episodes, I said, like loving Cypress is purple and loving Olive is orange. Like that's how different it is to me, like apples and oranges type of thing. And again, because they're two different people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the biggest thing I wanted to talk about on this is like the physical differences of boys and girls. And I'm not talking about the obvious or chromosomes here, but I just finished a book called, and I've referenced it a couple times already, but it's called Why Gender Matters by Leonard Sachs. He's a doctor, and it's about the physical differences in wiring of like boys and girls. And it was fascinating. It's written for teachers. I think it also for parents as well, just because I think it's like it opened my eyes to a lot of things that I like have noticed before but didn't realize there was a science behind it. So I wrote down several of these things and I was just going to read them and we can chat about them intermittently just because it blew my mind. And I kept I like took notes on this book and I kept I would read them to Nick at night. Nick at night. Read them to Nick at night just because they're so fascinating. And I feel like everybody could learn from these. The first thing I wrote down was the lack of awareness of gender differences has the unintended consequence of reinforced gender stereotypes, which I wanted to say because I thought it was interesting. And that like, I know that in some ways we've broken stereotypes of like men and women, and like we're still having to push through some of those. But if you're like operating too far, then like it said, you're actually reinforcing them, which I hadn't considered.
Yeah, that's interesting. So it's like not fully understanding the differences between them actually pushes them further apart.
Mm-hmm. Which isn't what we want to do at all, especially like we've talked about it before with toys and stuff like that. Like, yes, we have a toy kitchen. We just bought them both baby dolls. Like we let them play with what they want to play with, but we're not like putting them in a box. We're kind of letting them do what they want. I just hadn't considered the stereotype thing, and there's a line. And so, yeah, we're doing a good job to stay within it to where it's the most helpful.
Yeah.
This was super interesting. The girl brain looks at like color and texture, and the boy brain is like speed and direction. So whenever they color or whatever, girls will typically draw flowers or a puppy or something like that, and boys draw like action. So, a fight scene or something like that. Like that's just how their brain processes things. And so they, especially as a young child, you are drawing exactly what you're processing. And so just something to keep in thoughts there. And granted, it's not like every girl is like this and every boy is like this. The writer of the book, Leonard, he actually said he has more of like what would be considered leaning more of the female brain, and that he was into writing and like coloring, like more of the artist side, which is interesting since he became a doctor. I don't want to give way too much of his story because he does talk about that in there, but I just thought that was interesting because it's just like how they're wired. I don't know how else to say it.
That's super interesting. Did it talk at all about like the inherent differences of the brain as opposed to like environmentally suggested differences? Like, for example, guys are typically, like little boys typically have more like action heroes and those types of
That's
choices.
why. Is that what you're asking?
No, I'm saying those toys are typically given to them. The Barbie type toys are typically given to the girls.
Yeah.
The flowery type toys and more colorful toys are typically given to the girls. I'm saying, did he talk about in the book, are the brains different because of what society is pushing on them, or is it inherent differences?
No, it's an inherent differences. And so I think that's why this, like, naturally boys will gravitate more to cars because of how their brain is wired. Not to say they won't play with like a baby doll, but it's just like how their brains work. And so I think it has become a stereotype. The stereotypes are typically based on truth. I don't know how else to say it, but it's
No, you answered my question.
It's inherent.
And the twins are both of them are into cars and babies right now.
Yeah, they are. They are. Ooh, this was interesting because I feel like we're similar in this. Boys want to be alone under stress, and girls want to be with friends. So, like, how to process it, which I think it makes sense, like while parenting and maintaining a good relationship.
Was there an age range with this?
So some of them, yes, some of them, no. As far as like, there are some things that I'll say, like when the brain is forming. So like younger children, the brains look a lot different between boys and girls versus when you're like 30 and beyond, the brains look similar, more similar than they do when they're kids. So some of the things, they age out of. I mean, I'm not sitting around drawing right now, so I can't really look at it in regard to that. But that stress one was for all ages. I mean, because I don't know how stressed a kindergartner is. That's why I wrote it down, because I thought about it in regard to our parenting, that girls kind of like to talk through things, so we don't necessarily want the answer to be fixed. Whereas like when you're stressed, you're like in a mode of how can I fix this?
Yeah. Do you feel like you're seeing that with ours yet?
No.
Yeah, me neither.
I think they're a little too young for that. This was another one that I think relates to all age ranges, that girl friendships focus on one another and a boy friendship focuses on activities that they can do together, i.e. video games. Girls also have things that they will do together, but it's usually like an excuse to get together, like a reason to get together.
Same age range question.
No, I said at the beginning it's all ages. Like you're playing sports or you're going to a theme park or something. You're doing things. Like girls will do it, but they really are there for the camaraderie.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I ask is because I feel like that's a bit changing with the adults of our generation. Like there are things that me and my friends will do because we enjoy doing those things, but there is the understood component that we're going to hang out and talk.
Yeah, no, I think that that's definitely changing, especially as like boys and emotions are more accepted, that they have emotions they need to process too.
Yeah. But like the hangouts are not directly intending to talk about emotional things. It's just like, it seems like what's being teased out here is, like you said, like the girls just find any excuse to be together and the guys want to kind of be near each other doing an activity. It's like, what I'm saying is that's partially true, I think, for me, but it's not, I don't know. I don't know that typically the focus is on the activity more than it is on the group right now for me.
Yeah, I would say overall, as the male society, I'd say it does lean that way. But
okay,
I've already told you you're an anomaly. The main thing that they talked about in this also is to try to understand brains, is that now more than ever, kids are being diagnosed with disorders like ADD and things like that. But a lot of times it's, or this isn't saying that that's not real. What I'm saying is that there are sometimes that it's not necessarily the problem and you don't need to rush to medication or intervention, because they just need more time. And it talks about how, the kindergarten of this day and age is now what first grade used to be. So kids are having to learn more, and that the brain differences of girls and boys are different in the fact that, and maybe getting ahead of myself in something I wrote down, but the brain differences of the boys and girls are different because the girls like to please the teacher or the grown up, where boys are typically trying to impress one another. And so the girls can sit still and write or whatever, while as the boys, a lot of times like aren't ready for that yet, and like they used to not have to be. Like, kindergarten is an important time to like learn and like play, learn, and things like that. And we're kind of like taking it away from them. And so that's why a lot of boys are often held back, or the parent is deciding to hold them back based on, you know, their age and things like that, but also just their readiness like to learn. And studies have shown that if you are taking them to school too early, and kids in general, though this was like specific to boys, but kids in general, if you take them to school too early and they're not ready for it, then they can end up just like disliking school, and their whole trajectory changes because they were like kind of tainted from kindergarten on. And so just something to think about as far as like schooling and things that goes. We've kind of started thinking about preschool and things like that, and it's a very overwhelming. So obviously listen to your intuition and talk to your medical providers and things like that to make a decision, but still super interesting.
Did it talk about like suggestions of how to address like if your kid's been diagnosed with something like that? Because I hear what you're saying, like, okay, the boys have a propensity to not pay as much attention and impress their friends, which I understand, and I was that way when I was a kid. What if they get diagnosed with something like ADD or ADHD? Not to say that doctor's wrong, but like if we're saying those diagnoses are sometimes too quick and the boys need time, what is the recommendation of the writer?
He, as a doctor, was just like, don't jump to those conclusions. Like, a lot of the
Like speaking to other doctors or speaking to
no,
parents?
this is the parents. It's the parents and teachers, because a lot of times the teacher in these examples would be like, the teacher said they think that that he has ADD or something like that because he can't, or ADHD, and he can't sit still, when really he's just not ready to sit still yet. And so just not jumping to a medication, and you can make small tweaks and stuff like that to like help them. Another thing they talked about a lot were video games, and that the max a day, I've seen it varying. The most I've seen in just different books I've read said 45 minutes is the max. Other ones I've read say 30 minutes a day is the max, and to not watch like a violent shooters, especially where they're shooting civilians and you're rewarded for that. Playing any video game of any kind for longer than 30-ish minutes can drastically change their attitude and how they perform like in school and stuff like that as well. I don't know if I answered your question at all, but
I don't know that there is an answer to my question. I hear what you're saying. I think what's tough is like, I'm thinking forward, like, okay, Cypress has a recommendation from a teacher to go see if he needs, like, if he's actually got ADD or ADHD based on his behavior in school. So like, we can know what you've read in your book and know, okay, maybe it's just that he's a boy and needs a little bit more time to focus. Right. But I wouldn't want to keep him from going into a doctor to see if he actually has that, or if it's a more extreme case of it, because I know that he's a boy. So that's what I'm trying to tease out. And it's okay if you don't have the answer. Maybe the author didn't talk about it, but I guess like this is, maybe I should say, like, we're not physicians, right? This isn't medical advice. It's just, I'm trying to think as a parent in the future, like I would still probably go to the doctor, and before giving like prescription drugs that may be prescribed based on a diagnosis, I would consider what I'm reading here. Like, okay, maybe this isn't actually a medical thing.
Yes. And that was his whole point, is like jumping to medication versus making tweaks. Like, is there a kindergartner or something he can go to that is more like an actual kindergarten? Like, do they go outside? Do they, is it more play? You don't have to learn how to read that quickly. I mean, we have made more technological advances, but yet we have fallen behind, as America have like fallen behind in like schools. I forgot how they rank that, school smarts. I don't know. And so it's not correlating well that like we've taken away and like basically rushed school. It has not yielded the results I think that they thought that it would.
Yeah. I mean, this is not an education podcast, but this gets into how we're assessing a child's ability or readiness to move on. Because like more creative people don't love to sit still and don't love to be dictated to. It doesn't mean they're any less intelligent or not able to demonstrate that they're capturing the concepts that are trying to be conveyed to them. So, yeah, I was also like, I wouldn't say troublemaker, but like I was talking, I was the jokester, I was trying to make the teacher laugh. Like, and I mean, this isn't going to sound humble, but like until late high school, like it was very easy for me to demonstrate that I knew what was being taught.
Yeah.
So I would fill the rest of the time I had in class where I was expected to be silent with fun. And I wouldn't say, like, if I heard that was Cypress, I would be a little bit proud, less than disappointed, you know, because like that's how dad was. And I'm just saying, like, let's not measure symptoms that could be analogous with ADD and ADHD as my kid's broken.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that the whole point of talking about this episode is that people are different, number one, but like boys and girls are different. So for me, I have a late birthday. My birthday's in August. And my parents made the choice not to hold me back. So I was always the youngest in my grade. And if they hadn't have done that, the fear was that I would have been bored and then gotten myself into like trouble or been like a troublemaker of sorts.
Yeah.
And so like I thrived in, that. And I think that's also where, we're not talking about holding back for sports and size and things like that, which is also something that people do. But just like, I think my life would have looked different if I was held back for like, just because I was the youngest for my grade.
Aside from, I probably would have flirted with you if I was a kid in your class. I would, if you were working super hard and I was bored, I probably would have thrown a paper airplane at you, or I would have launched paper clips to land on your desk.
Oh man, super annoying.
But maybe one of them would have contained a note that says, "Do you like me?" Checkbox, yes or no.
Oh, maybe.
How cute.
Maybe. Another thing that I think parents struggle with is that they feel like the burden is on them. And something that Dr. Leonard said was taking the burden off the parents and the child, and then versus what the physician is saying. So instead of saying, for example, this is saying you go in and have a not appraisal. There you go. I was like, appraisal. That's a house.
How much is my kid worth?
Priceless. Your son is disrespectful versus your son may meet criteria for a psychiatric disorder. So just because like we as parents take on the burden, and we talk about it for how I try to separate myself from them, and like when they do something good or when they do something quote bad, it's not my fault, and like I have contributed to things, but like I try to like lead that to them, so I don't.
Can you restate the point of the writer here? I'm not following.
Sorry, that he just is making sure that whenever he's diagnosing or things like that, he's trying to take the burden off of the parent and the child.
That's great.
So the child didn't do something wrong. The parent didn't do something wrong. This is something that just in brains, like things happen. People are different. And
I understood your perspective on it. I didn't know what you were saying. The writer.
Yeah, I was just saying it's not your fault as a parent, and that there are ways to learn and cope and like set up your child for success.
This reminds me of when I brought up the podcast quote I heard where it's like, you are a product or the result of how your parents parented you or raised you, but it's not their fault. Like, we as parents can step into that same mindset from the other perspective as well. Like, yes, we're trying our best. But if something is going better or worse than we were expecting, we don't have to assume that it's because of us.
Yeah. Another thing that was just wildly fascinating to me, and just to be clear, this is something that women carry with them. It's not just like a young child thing, but that girls can smell better than boys. And in specific, not like in general, like I know if you're smelling coffee or wine or things like that, that's not what I'm talking about. When it goes to like a repeated smell. So in the book, he gives an example of the husband and wife are about to leave on a trip. The wife was like, this smells horrible in here. Something is like rancid. They couldn't figure out. They left on the trip. They came back and she was like, oh my gosh, this smells even worse. We need to have somebody come out and look at the air ducts and things like that to see if they can find anything. It smells like a dead animal. And sure enough, I'm not going to go into detail what it was, but there was something up there. And the woman felt validated, and the guy was like, oh, cool. Thank you. But there's science behind it, and that women, when they have a repeated scent, can identify it and smell like 1,000% more than like males. And I thought this was interesting in regard to parenting, just because how stereotypically it's like, oh, whenever little boys start going through puberty and stuff like that, their body smells changes, whatever, and that their rooms typically like are dark and smell bad, and they don't realize it because they are not that it's a repeated scent, and it's just like whatever it is to them. Whereas the moms comes in and is like, oh, this smells horrible, clean your room. He can't tell. Don't like lean into it. It's not like an excuse, but I just thought it was just the more like I thought it was just a cool thing to learn. Plus it's fun, like, I don't know, happy cocktail conversation just to be like, hey, did you know this?
Yeah, it's interesting. Also, like, the twins are too young for me to actually know, but Cypress seems to call out scents even from across the room more than Olive does right now.
Yeah.
And she may be recognizing it and just not vocalizing it, but like if I make coffee or open a thermos of coffee or
if
something,
we walk by Starbucks or something.
Yeah, like he'll yell coffee,
Mm-hmm.
or he'll say, like, he'll smell watermelon from across the room. Like he can pick things out without seeing them. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's cool. Another one of those things I thought was super interesting was about hearing, and that women, again, this is whole life, not just like young children, that they're more sensitive to hearing. The example he gave was like in school, if a boy is in the back of the classroom and you have a soft-spoken, usually like woman, female teacher, they are not necessarily paying attention, and it's not because they're trying to not pay attention, but they honestly are not hearing her. They're like listening, but they're not hearing her. And that boys, to get their attention and hold their attention, you have to speak 8 decibels loud. I think I mentioned this the other week, 8 decibels louder than you would their female counterpart, which is like the equivalent of 3 knob turns on the car radio. And I think that makes so much sense as far as like even adult males just getting their attention. Like you might feel like you're yelling, but actually they don't interpret it that way. And they're also able to like hear you. And in the same way, when some women or some men talk to women, they are speaking a little bit too loudly, and so the women feel like, oh, that was aggressive, when the guy may not be meaning it aggressively. But it just, the point is that it works both ways. If you're trying to get the guy's attention, speak more loud. I don't know. Louder. There we go. Thank you. And then if you're talking to a female, you might like turn it down a little bit.
I didn't remember this when you brought this up first, but now I have. I remember being in class and getting in trouble for asking teachers to repeat things. And I don't.
Why? That's a silly thing. Like you're trying to learn. I mean, because it wasn't.
Well, I can tell you why.
Because you were talking. Sorry, let me just.
It's okay. It's okay. The reason is I was typically loud in my speaking, so it probably sounded like, "Hey, what do you mean?" Like, or can you say that again? Also, remember that I was the jokester. So if I'm speaking up, it's usually either there's a problem, I've made like some joke, or I'm trying to be funny. So I think that, coupled with me being louder, and the female teacher is probably not thinking like, oh, Nick just didn't hear. I typically receive responses that were a little more aggressive. So like, be me and say, hey, can you repeat that?
Hey, would you mind repeating that for me?
If you would put your paperclip down and listen, I'm talking about this. There was a lot of that. Even if the teachers were not typically like that way, if they were kind of kind, they would take questions to repeat from me and some other guys that way. And I'm like, we can set aside, maybe they have some, they were influenced by us being troublemakers a bit, which I can understand.
Like you weren't paying attention.
But I think there's probably a component of like, they assumed I was trying to mess with them, as opposed to I didn't hear you or I didn't understand.
He said there wasn't like an ultimate fix as far as like, okay, move the boys to the front of the classroom, because boys typically sit in the back, girls typically sit in the front.
I was
Again,
a front sitter.
You were?
I was a front sitter.
Oh, wow. That's, yeah.
It's bold.
Okay, well, no, I mean, I'm a front center too, but
we had front sitting for different reasons.
Yeah, I'm sure. Some people be like, okay, the boy's not paying attention. And like distracting is different than like not paying attention, right? If you're being Nick, trickster, Nickster over here, and like just like distracting the whole classroom, that's something else. But as far as like kind of being off in their own little world, I feel like it's different. Because I don't think that they're hearing just because it's not loud enough. So sometimes teachers will be like, okay, you're going to sit in the front. But again, remember, the boys have their like allegiance to each other's other, and the girls really are like the grown up, the teacher, whatever.
Yeah.
And so they're sitting in the front and they can hear the teacher, and they're respecting her probably. Whereas the boys sitting in the back are like, okay, let's move them to the front. That doesn't fix it. It's the loudness that they've seen like can fix the issue.
You in elementary school would have been very upset with me in elementary school. Just pointing that out. I had girls that were like, Nick, can you just like stop?
In elementary school or like middle school?
Yeah.
I don't remember having those types of feelings or whatever. And
you never got annoyed when a guy next to you was being loud and unruly and you were trying to understand what the
I don't
was
have
saying.
Recollections of things like that happening.
Okay. I remember that happening to me. They weren't being mean or anything. Like I was distracted.
I could see in like middle and high school.
All.
but like elementary just feels, I don't know, different.
I had another thing I was going to say.
Okay.
This is just a funny thing about me. I would also I would help people if I found out they didn't understand, even if they weren't asking. Like, I was helping them. I would go up to the front. Like, I was always volunteering to go like teach and help and everything. So like,
on the projector, and then you get the marker all over your hand for the day.
I wasn't like the teachers didn't hate me. I wasn't the anti-student, you know. Like I did. Loud. I did. Yeah, I did care about people getting it, and I did care about getting it. And I was not the kid who made fun of people for not understanding something. I just got really bored when I knew what was happening. I felt like I understood the concept. There was another 45 minutes of class. I was like, let's have fun. Like, I get it. Let's move on.
That makes sense. Yeah. That makes sense. Okay, summer vacation is at its peak right now. It's about to dip off, but there's also fall travel. Regardless of if you have travel planned or not, if you're just going to your grocery store, you might check out Tush Baby. We have the Tush Baby. It straps around your waist and gives a little seat for your baby to sit on, or your toddler, and it just helps support your back. I have scoliosis, and it helps my back feel better while carrying around children. And yeah, we have a discount code for you to try. It's BGMAD for 15% off.
BGMAD. Do it. It's awesome. It's not a replacement tush for your baby, to be clear. It's a place for your baby's tush to sit.
Yeah.
Just in case people are confused.
Yeah.
Go buy it.
This I also found interesting. And again, just to clarify, this is seen in people older than children as well. So it's not just like a kid thing. But when boys fight, I don't remember if I mentioned this in another episode, but when boys fight, they fight really quickly and then they're over it and they're friends forever. When girls fight, the feeling lasts. And they've actually seen this modeled in chimps as well, that the boys chimps. No, girls are chimps too. That my point is that when the boys modeled like the human males, and then the girls, the chimps could hold like hostility and like not like that person for years. And I just feel like that's very similar. Like, you don't really want to pit girls against each other because it's very personal, whereas like boys like the competition. There you go.
The one thing I would change in what you said is yes, we can typically fight and move on pretty quick, but the decision to be friends or best friends with that person is completely separate. So I can move on very quickly, but just because we fought and I'm done with that fight doesn't mean we're friends now.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I hold on to things. Just like you can make that choice pretty quickly. I would say almost as quick as I want to reconcile. It's just like, okay, we're done with this.
I think how I mentioned it the other week when I was talking about the lawyer, about how she was a litigator, and she didn't realize that the guys would just like name call whatever in court and then just go get a drink afterwards, and she was like, oh yeah, you don't mean any of those things really, like personally, you're doing your job. Whereas like, again, girls don't really operate that way, and it's a little bit harder to do.
There is an assumption that the line is being held between like, we need to fight, and then there's personal stuff. But there's also like, there are, especially in conversation, there are lines that guys like to hold that are kind of not cool. You know, like there's a difference between ribbing and like personally calling out, you know, somebody that you love on your side of the family or something like that. There's a difference between like a clean fight and a dirty fight. Yeah. You know, like there are lines that are typically physically held.
Yeah, I think I'm thinking about Remember the Titans, which is one of my all-time favorite movies, about when they're in the locker room and they start telling the mama jokes.
Yeah.
When they don't realize that it's like a joke.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just like on the competition piece, which kind of brings us into our next section, which is another book that I've read. It's called Boys Adrift by Leonard Sachs. And there's a girls version too that I have not read yet. But in this book, they talk about the competition in boys and how they thrive on it. And like, if you can, like finding a boys school, number one, boys typically thrive better in like an all boys school. But that finding a school that specifically, you know, breeds the competition. And like, there's a couple of them, I think they were in Australia, where these schools, is upon entering, they assign a color, blue team or white team, and then everything you do is awards points to your team. And so whether that be schoolwork or sports or anything like that, so you want to make your team
It's
win.
like a
And
Hogwarts house.
yes, exactly. And they're given at random unless you have like an older brother who was a specific team, then you can be on the same team as that one, just because it again promotes camaraderie within the household and like something to fight for. And that helped boys do better in school, because academics specifically, because it's all a game, and that games guys thrive on that and that competition. So the part that I really wanted to talk about from that book is that, and it's about boys, but they also like reference girls, that boys' brains are different than girl brains. And we kind of mentioned that in the Why Gender Matter books. But boy brains are structured to facilitate connectivity between perception and coordinated action, whereas girl brains are designed to facilitate communication between analytical and intuitive processing modes. And said another way, I think it just fits with like girls and camaraderie and wanting to be with other people and like speak and talk about feelings or whatever, whereas like the boys again are, it's with action.
Yeah. So the guys more succinctly would be like, I want to understand what's happening and fix it.
Yeah.
And the girls would be more like, I want to work through what's
Mm-hmm.
happening.
Yeah. And another thing that it said in this book, which you and I talked about off air, like when I first read it, and you kind of agreed with it, but that boys' allegiance are to other boys, and the girls are again to like the grown up or teacher, but also boys want to, meaning the boys want to impress other boys. And so if they act up like you did in class or whatever, it raised your social status with other boys. Whereas if a girl acts up in class, it does not raise her social status. And girls kind of like, okay, what are you doing? And so just how that is different within the packs, if you will.
Yeah, I think there's an element of respect. It's not necessarily with the goal of being popular or socially acceptable. It's more just like, are the other guys proud of what I've done?
Yeah. Yeah. Whereas the girl wants to impress the teacher or whatever.
Yeah.
And they often look for that within like the teacher relationship. And it also said that because of that reason, if you're a teacher and you're teaching a girl something, she wants you to be basically across the table from her and look in her eyes and smile. Puts her at ease. Like, don't be weird about it, but like, whereas a guy, you need to be next to him, like shoulder to shoulder, not looking him in the eye, and basically helping him from the side. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense.
But just like in how, again, girls and guys are different.
There's a scene in the show Billions where one of the
Is this a spoiler alert?
No,
Okay.
one of the super successful hedge fund managers like has boys, and he's like, had just finished breakfast with them, was talking to them across the breakfast bar, and was like quizzing them on stuff they wouldn't have learned in school, just like deeper dives into history and pieces of the financial system. And I remember it because like he was intensely proud when they got intellectual concepts correct or could recall things from memory, similar to how I think a father would be proud of their son scoring a touchdown or doing the right thing on the field, So like I liked that, like the encouragement of, I respect what you've just done, both physical and mental, because I feel like it's pretty heavily weighted on the physical exertion side for guys. So the reason that connects for me is like, I was wondering, how would it change the guys pursuing the respect of their peers if the teachers were like, oh, well done, like that was awesome, really good job, like if there was that, I don't
verbal,
know, I would respect that, I think.
Kind of
because it is
setting the tone.
Yeah, like it is impressive when another guy can do something mentally impressive the same way he can physically. It's not just about the humor and the physical exertion. It's like, but I just don't know. I don't remember teachers being that enthusiastic about really anyone doing great. The expectation is that you get it, and that their baseline was like, yeah, that's right, and then they'd move on. It's not like, I just wonder if that would feel different for the guys.
Yeah. And another thing that they talked about in this specific book, the Boys Adrift book, is we talked about it a couple episodes back. I believe it was the boy mom versus girl mom one, I think. And it was about tomboys, and that girls, I said that those girls were cool, and you kind of questioned it. But that like the opposite, when the guy is a little bit more feminine. In this book, it says, when the girl is a tomboy, it raises her social status. When the boy is more feminine, that it typically like lowers his social status. And I thought that was interesting because just all the data that they paired with it. So like looking at the brains and like just asking, they give an example of like color. So girls are more perceptive to color, and so they'd be like, okay, which color is lime green, which color is sage, which one's emerald. The girls all ace that test, tomboy or like girly girl alike. Whenever the boys were asked, the more feminine ones could answer that question, but the other boys could not. And so I think what makes it different and why the tomboys are typically still like socially accepted by the other girls is because they still have that part of the brain that identifies with the girly girl. It's just more like a double whammy. And those tomboys are typically fairly popular usually. And again, because they're accepted by their peers. I don't know. It's not fair really, but it was interesting in how, because I said I thought they were cool and you questioned that. And the book basically affirmed, not that you're wrong. That was not the point of me saying all this, but that it's just interesting.
I
I feel
questioned
like I've
whether
used
they
the word
would
interesting
be
too much.
perceived as cool. I was not saying I thought they were or were not. Just to be clear.
Okay. I just found that fascinating, and that it makes sense again because like I was not a tomboy, but I wanted to be like Mary Kate Olsen and like It Takes Two and wear my hat backwards. I also emulated my papa, my mom's dad, of like wanting to have like my tube socks like pulled up and stuff like that. So
which is cool now.
It is cool now. But it just, again, I keep using the word interesting. I probably overused it. I need to figure out a different word. But that whole book is just fascinating and mind-blowing. And I think that a lot of people could benefit from that knowledge, because the whole point in saying it is, just so you can better parent or better even like interact with other people in general. That's the whole reason I think it's worth the read or listen. It's on Audible, or Libby has it too. My Libby does. Okay, I have some TikTok videos I wanted to go over.
Okay.
And actually, I don't know if you watched this one. I should have had you watch them before we...
Yeah, you should. I thought these were all ones that we've watched. Do we need to pause so I can watch them really quick? Also, I can't... Your notes have the link, which I think is hilarious. Now my brain is telling me to... I know you printed this from an Apple Note, but my brain is telling me if I push this button on my paper, I can open up the app.
I think...
How is that not hilarious to you?
Okay. Well, no, I saved... Stop it. You're making all this noise.
It's not working.
I saved them there so that I can just copy and paste into the show notes. So
I'm not saying you're doing anything wrong.
Okay.
I'm saying it's hilarious to me. See, look, everybody.
Yeah.
It's not working. My iPad's broken.
So the first one is from a woman named Miriam. You've seen her content before. She's an Orthodox Jew. And so she'll talk about like lifestyle and things like that as an Orthodox Jew. It's very fascinating. I follow her. But she has 4 daughters. And so she did a post. It was in response to a comment like asking if I forgot what it asked, like if she felt bad that she didn't have a son or something along those lines. And her husband is actually in this video with her. Oh, I think it said like, do we ever wish we have had a son? And her husband goes, I tried to get a son and they end up giving me the moon. And I just thought it was really sweet. And you can, again, I'll link the video so you can watch it. But it's cute. Again, it's just that society has this pressure that you need to have a son. And I don't know, I think people say like having a son and a daughter is like the ideal scenario, but I don't ever hear them saying like, you need to have a daughter. And so again, it's just this societal norm that we're having to work past. And I know that I'm called Boy Girl Mom and we're the Boy Girl Mom and Dad podcast, but it's not because we think it's like this ideal scenario. I think we just wanted to be inclusive because, again, that's why I created Boy Girl Moms. I felt like left out of the boy mom and girl mom culture.
I like the perception of like the sun versus moon because it supports the difference in how we love them, like you referenced earlier. And yeah, to summarize a piece of what you were saying, whatever combination you have, if you've been blessed with kids, is the right combination for you. Yeah. So there's no, like, are you going to try for the, sometimes carries with it like, oh, what
you have isn't good enough.
Your situation will be better if, and I just don't think that's a great mental path to go down.
Yeah. And again, this isn't saying like your feelings are not valid if you wish you had a boy or you wish you had a girl. Gender disappointment's real. So we're not saying that, but we're just saying we're pushing back on what society is pushing to us.
Yeah. Like if you feel like a piece is missing because you don't have a specific sex as a kid, I don't know. I don't think that's healthy for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The other one you have seen the video because I showed it to you yesterday and I forget what his handle is, but I'll link the videos. And I don't agree with everything he says in the video, but I don't think you have to agree with everything somebody says to listen to somebody or like read a book or whatever. I think it's cool just to learn and You can make your decision of what you agree with. But one thing I liked about, I think it's like Big Bro something is his handle. He suggests to get boys a plant. And he says, get them a plant so they can nourish it and help it grow versus just protect. And I think, protecting can be good, is good, but it can be also unhealthy at times. And so just having them take care of the plant is learning. They may not be into dolls, I think females typically have a more of like a nurture that's just nature like for them. And so this gives the boy something to care about and have him name the plant and things like that. I thought it was really sweet.
Yeah, I like that. I challenge whether protecting is bad.
Yeah.
But I agree that it needs to be supplemented with the nourishing piece.
Well, I think
ways in which you can protect
can be toxic. That's what I mean. Protecting in general.
But yeah, being a protector should really always be our roles. I think knowing when to protect somebody or something you love is a skill that everybody should have.
Yes, everybody. Yes. Not just boys.
That's what I said. I said no, not just boys.
I'm just clarifying it for our listeners.
Yeah.
And then he has another video that I'll also link that I liked because it made me think of Nick. It said like to buy boys flowers. And he was like, I've had some flowers sometimes like bought for me and it just was really special. And there's a different video. I don't know if I can find it. I'll see if I can find it where it was like older guys that gave each other. Remember, it was like a podcast. I
think I sent it to you.
Yeah, I'll write it down to see if I can.
It was just two guys. I think they were hanging out. I don't think it was a podcast recording. Yeah. Actually, it was an interview.
I think it was 3 guys and the recorder gave the 2 guys flowers.
There was a producer involved, but it was a conversation between 2 guys. The interviewer was interviewing somebody famous and was saying like, hey, I think guys specific, like it was 2 black guys. He was specifically saying like us in our, like, we don't typically give each other flowers and have these types of conversations. So I got these
as
for
black
you.
Men,
And the interviewee was really
taken aback, like in a good way,
and impressed by it. It's not a race thing. I think that they were having that conversation. Correct. But I like that idea of just like appreciating the beauty in things is not inherently a female concept.
Right. So the whole reason I brought up the video was because it made me think of you, because when we were first dating, and I would like come over, you would make me dinner or something, you would buy flowers and they weren't given to me. No, it's something wrong. I think it's cute now, but they weren't flowers for me. Well, I was kind of like, where's my flowers?
Sometimes they were. Finish your point and then we'll talk about you. What did I do?
You would buy flowers and like to kind of, and they were like, because you genuinely.
Where would they go?
On the table with dinner. Yes. No, we got in a whole fight about the flowers.
I know. I'm just saying you haven't laid out the thing yet.
He would buy flowers and I just appreciated his appreciation of it is my whole point, is that you enjoyed the flowers. And I don't know, I bought you plants. I maybe have bought you flowers here and there, but I don't remember the last time I did. So maybe I'll go buy you some flowers. But you would buy flowers and you genuinely enjoyed them and they weren't as like a feminine thing per se, like you genuinely liked them.
Yeah, I liked the concept of having flowers on the table in general. I likened it in my mind to the Pierce Brosnan version of Thomas Crown Affair is one of my favorite movies. And like he comes home and there's like wine on his table. There's flowers on his table. Like he's, it's not an effeminate thing. It's just like there's beautiful things around where he lives and he prefers to have them around him.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's why I started doing it, but I just liked the idea of like, I can come home and enjoy this regardless of if it's for somebody else or not. And contrary to your memory, sometimes they were for you.
Well, they were for me. I just didn't get to take them home. That's what I'm saying. Like I didn't get to enjoy them in my space. If you took them home,
they wouldn't be on my table anymore.
Yeah, but I'll just go ahead and tell the story. I don't know if you remember this story of the flowers. So I remember being frustrated. We had been dating for like 3 or 4 months at this point, and we weren't like official. We hadn't DTR'd. And it was Easter, and you brought my mom a beautiful bouquet of flowers, and I was frustrated because I think we weren't official yet. And I was like, you haven't even bought me flowers. And I know that I can buy myself flowers, but I didn't want to. Okay. I wanted you to buy me flowers. I wanted to be your girlfriend. Okay.
Yeah.
And anyway, that was.
So the headline is "Don't buy flowers for your in-laws." That's a terrible idea. No, right? That's what you're trying to say.
It's very sweet, but I wanted some of the sweetness. Okay.
I remember this fight now.
Yeah. You're welcome. Anyway, we've moved past it. He bought me some beautiful, like burgundy colored English garden roses this week.
Just the other day.
They're on our table right now.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anyway, and the last one is an Instagram post that I'll put it here, but it's from Dr. Christian Gonzalez, and he said the most dangerous, or one of the things, I think, or not the most, but one of the most dangerous things for a father to say to his son is stop crying. And I think we talked about this before, but again, it's like good for you to cry. It's like a release from your body, but the thought that like boys can't or shouldn't process these emotions, or like real boys don't cry or whatever, should be a thing of the past, just because you should be able to process your emotions and you're worthy of processing your emotions.
Yeah, it's interesting. I agree with it. It's not too much of a struggle for me right now. The thing that's annoying, and I have to tell myself to not say, is saying it's okay, which I don't think is as toxic or as bad as they're referring to crying here. But like this morning, Cypress tripped and fell and busted his lip open a little bit on the floor, sad. And he was crying, and I didn't care that he was crying. Right, no. I had no thought of like tell him to stop crying. But I did catch myself a few times saying like, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. And I'm trying to comfort him in that moment. But I think there's a component of it's okay that says, toughen up, you're fine.
Yeah.
Which is not what I'm trying to communicate. Right. More what I'm trying to say is like, you will be okay. Which again, doesn't always need to be said. But I wasn't trying to stop him from being sad or hurt or, needing comfort or anything. So yeah, I agree with it. I wonder what other things are similar to the stop crying, but also like, I think the guys crying as a show of weakness is kind of going away in general. So I'm talking to myself. I should pay attention to whether I am unintentionally putting a stigma around that for my son specifically. But I am less worried about society pushing that on him than when I was growing up.
Yeah, for sure. I also think that, I don't think every guy, like there's not like you cry more than me in specific scenarios. And my whole point saying that is like, I feel like that's a good model. Not to say you have to be crying all the time. You don't cry all the time, but you don't have to like cry in front of your children to be a good model. But
I think suppression of emotion in any form is harmful.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not an original idea, but yeah. But I also like, we don't need to like force it either,
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't recommend to myself or my kids, like, you need a cry release, like go once a week, you need to go have a good cry. It's just like, feel what you're feeling. It's okay.
I think that it depends. It makes me think of Shrinking whenever a character is like, yeah, my therapist told me to, and something traumatic had happened. And she said, yeah, my therapist told me I could like set my timer for 15 minutes a day and cry and just like get it out. And I think that's helpful in this scenario. This isn't, but we're not saying like, yeah, go cry once a week or whatever.
Yeah.
I think that it's specific to scenarios.
Yeah.
So to kind of wrap up this part of the show, I wrote down just to ask the question of like the biggest differences in raising like son versus daughters, or like the hardest part. And we kind of answered this on the boy mom versus girl mom episode. And I think the differences are, for me at least, are just not pushing stereotypes while also affirming like, what they want to do and like who they are. I'm probably not saying that well.
Can you just restate it? What do you mean?
The biggest differences in raising sons versus daughter for me is like embracing what they want to do while also, or challenges would say, embracing what they want to do while also not pushing like stereotypes onto them.
So I agree with what you're saying. I don't know that it's an answer to the question you're posing, because like what you're saying, I think can be applied to anybody.
Yeah.
So it's not really identifying a difference. What you're doing is identifying a similarity.
Well, maybe I meant, yeah, the hardest, what's the hardest part of, or what's the biggest difference is that they're different people and they like different things. But honestly, that works for either child.
Right.
So that's why I see what you're saying. But like, I also, that's my answer.
Okay. So do I answer?
Yeah, you can, or you don't have to. We kind of talked about it at the other, like when people say like raising sons versus daughters, like what comes to mind for you?
It's kind of early. Like the things that I think about, we've talked about before, is like I snap to protecting Olive. I snap to expecting more out of Cypress, but I am catching myself in those tiny little expectations. I wouldn't say that raising them right now is significantly different. I think I'm recognizing differences in their personality, but in the ways in which I need to raise them, I don't really see too many differences
Yeah.
in that
But
with me.
I think that's a great answer because I feel like that you're aware of what you're doing and how, you can dial it back in certain ways to where
Yeah.
they are the best that they can be, or
Yeah.
you can be the best parent that you can be like for
Yeah.
them. I think
Yep.
that's a great answer. So yeah, the whole point of this whole episode is just to say that people are different, kids are different, and nurture them accordingly. The reality is that regardless of if you have just sons or daughters, or both, that this is true. I just said sons or daughters because people like to compare them, but they're different people. Learn about them, get to know them. My friend Haven, who I've said before, I'll link her podcast. She is Haven's, the podcast. She's like, I don't know yet. When people ask what, like, why her daughter did something the way that she did, or why her son does something, she's like, I don't know. I don't know him yet. I can ask her later. But I just really like that attitude toward it.
Yeah. What's the author's name again for all these points?
Oh, Leonard Sachs.
Hey, Leonard Sachs, if this ever makes it to you, we'd love to have you on and
Yeah.
interview you. Maybe you should send an email and just see if the guy will respond. Who knows?
Yeah.
It sounds like that'd be a great conversation.
Actually, we are just now starting to explore bringing people on, like interviewing them and talking about different things. So if you have somebody that you would like to have on or think that we'd be a great fit for,
or if you think you would be a good fit.
Yeah, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can DM us on boygirlmom.com, or you can send us an email at hello@boygirlmom.com.
Yeah. Also, you don't have to be somebody of note or have some type of following or anything. I think we want to talk to people who have worthy conversation topics or cool perspectives or anything around parenting. So if you just have a unique scenario, a unique perspective, whatever, it doesn't matter if you've written a book or you have a massive following or you're a celebrity or anything. Like, I don't care. I want to talk to people who are going to help push forward our journey of becoming better parents.
Yeah, same. So ultimately, we hoped you learned some key differences between boys and girls and how they're wired, just so you can adjust your parenting and like nurture them accordingly. I read a lot of books, just because I don't know the answers to everything, but and I want to be prepared, but also life is just a great teacher. And so you could read a ton of books, and if you're not paying attention to what's actually happening in life or actually paying attention to your kids, then you're doing a disservice, because they are the greatest teachers. But I'm going to do a blog post for this, but I wanted to just list some of my favorite books that I've read that are on specifically boys and specifically on girls. And again, if you don't have time to read books, listen to them. Like, you're still getting the content. There's Audible. There's, I think, SCRIBD, Scribd or something like that is one. But also Libby is a great one. They have, it just connects with your local library. And so you can read books and listen to books for free.
Yep.
But yeah, so the girl books that I've read are Raising Worry-Free Girls by Sissy Goff. She is a licensed professional counselor. There is a boy version too that is on my shelf, but I've not read it. But it's basically just about the anxiety that the world presses into girls and just how to help them cope, like both as a parent and what to instill in them. Another one is Girls and Sex by Perry Orenstein. I've also read the boy version, Boys and Sex by Peggy Orenstein. And it's, I think, I didn't want to read some of it, but I just think it's also imperative to learn.
Not because of the author. You're just saying it's a tough subject.
Yes, it's a tough subject. And like some of the stuff in it is very tough to listen to or to read on a page. But I think that it is worth the read just from what it's teaching and just to be aware. Like, you with this topic, you can't really, nor should you just stick your head in the sand and pretend that you can't see it or it's not there, or like don't listen because you don't want to talk about it. You are going to need to talk about it, and it's best to be prepared. So I thought both of those were very good. The boy version is called Boys and Sex. And then the other one I really enjoyed is called Decoding Boys by Kara Natterson. I've mentioned this book before as well. And Kara Natterson is the one who wrote the American Girl book, The Care and Keeping of You. And she's the one who actually pushed for a boy version of that, which I've talked about before. If you grew up in the 90s as a girl, then you probably read that book. It just like, it did talk about puberty, but it also like hygiene and, brushing your teeth, and just like a how-to book. And that didn't exist for boys. So thank you, Kara, for one, writing that book, and then two, writing this book. I thought it was fascinating. It just like everything that a boy, goes through and thinks, for the most part. I know, yes, she's a woman, but she's a mother. And it was just a cool read as a mother reading it.
You liked that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. The last thing we're going to talk about is an Ask BGMAD that is very fitting for today. Someone wrote in and said, I have 3 boys and I'm pregnant with boy-girl twins. I'm so excited to finally carry a girl. I'm excited for my boy, but I've also never had a girl. I'm worried that if I choose things like all the girly things like pink for my shower and stuff like that, people will think I'm favoring my girl. How do you combat this? I said, when I was thinking about what to say, I was like, first of all, you're considering. It's kind of like the bad mom question. Like, am I a bad mom? Well, a bad mom wouldn't think to ask, am I a bad mom? And so it's the fact that you're aware of this is proof that you are not favoring your girl, I think. Like, I think you wouldn't be able to admit that if you were. And then also something that I struggle with as a person is like, you can't always be understood. And you have to kind of just not worry about those other people because you know in your heart, like, what it is. And I think the fact that you're aware of it means you're in the clear to do what you want to do. If you want to do a pink shower, do it.
Yeah. To me, this question is about perception. Mm-hmm. And I think that if you care about who is perceiving you as a parent, you're focusing a little too far outside of your house. So, which is easy to say and hard to implement sometimes. Oh, sure. But so the question I would pose back to this person is, if somebody told you it was silly or stupid to buy a pink shower curtain, would you change your mind? What? I said shower curtain. Because
I was talking about a baby shower, not a shower curtain. The theme of her
The question says, I choose all pink for my shower.
Yeah, her baby shower. No.
How am I supposed to know the difference? And why is that so funny? Why is that so funny? You didn't tell me.
Oh, my word. She wants to do like
How would I know?
A pink thing.
I'm feeling marginalized right now.
A pink theme for like the baby shower.
Yeah, I get it. You didn't say that. You know that a shower is a shower in the bathroom, right? You know that.
We don't have a shower curtain.
That's not that weird.
It's hilarious. So thank you for that.
Oh my gosh.
For that laugh.
I'm going to restate my point now. Obviously, we're talking about baby showers because anyone who thinks a shower in the bathroom, you're ridiculous. Why would you think that? You have to admit that is not that weird. It's literally spelled the same.
So
it's the same weird word in English that means 2 different things. You gave no context here in your notes or the conversations. How am I supposed to know?
It's a baby shower. I don't know.
How am I supposed? Does it say baby shower? No, it doesn't say baby shower.
Wow. Okay. Sorry. Continue.
Whew. Sometimes boys have reactions to being told they're stupid a little bit.
You're not stupid.
Yeah.
No, it's okay. You have other personality traits that are great.
Okay. That's how Lauren's family says you're stupid.
No, we don't ever say that.
That's what it means.
We don't ever say that. We're not mean. It's a joke.
Okay.
There you go. You're laughing now.
Okay. If you can't let me finish, can you?
Go.
My question to the asker, my question to the person who wrote in is, if you got a suggestion from somebody outside that was criticizing you, hey, why would you make these things pink in your baby shower? That's ridiculous. You have boys. Would you change your mind? It would probably make you feel bad, but I don't think you should change your mind simply because of what somebody else says.
Yeah.
Right? Like, the question here is not, am I preferring my girls over my boys if I make this decision? The question is, I'm worried that people will think I'm favoring my girl. Don't worry what they think. Worry what's right for your kids.
Yeah. And I feel like it's a little bit easier for you to say, because I feel like you are able to brush off what other people say more. And me, I struggle with this. And I think a lot of females do specifically, is like, if someone says something to me, like, then I feel bad and I'm likely to not do it, or I'll change it or adjust. I think I've gotten better at it, but it's still like hard.
Do you agree with that approach though? Like, I'm not telling you don't feel bad. It's stupid to feel bad.
It's more like, I don't know what to do. It's the same.
But you just said this. You said you would probably change what you're doing because of something that was suggested to you. Yeah. Why?
I don't know. I just would feel weird at that point.
Yeah, but so I'm not telling you that's ridiculous. I'm not saying don't feel your feelings, and I'm not saying you shouldn't feel bad if somebody if somebody criticizes you ever, that's going to make you feel bad. That's a normal reaction. but you get to choose whether you change your own decisions or alter your course based on something you heard from somebody else. That's your choice.
I know. Again, I just think it's harder. It's the
I
same
didn't say
reason.
it's easy. I didn't say it's easy. I just don't think that you're focusing on the right thing. If you're making decisions based on what others are yelling at you about, that's not you guarding what you want to happen. Like, I think there's a clear difference between, like, if, okay, we're friends, right? And I ask this question of you. If you tell me, like, as a trusted friend, oh no, I don't think that's odd. Maybe if you did this way, or like you're entering into a conversation with me about how to protect the perception of my boys, and you're not criticizing me, that's a different thing. If I change my decisions based on that outcome of a trusted friend or family member in that type of a conversation, that's different. But what I'm hearing here is, oh no, people might think I'm favoring.
Yeah.
But people thinking you're favoring doesn't change the perception of your kids. Your kids are the ones that build their perceptions. So you should make your decisions based on how you think they will feel and how you want to edify or support them. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not trying to put a blanket over it or suggest that you should just block out everybody. My point is that you shouldn't alter your course simply because you're worried about the perception of others.
I hear you. I think that, it's the same reason why we didn't tell people the names we were thinking about for the twins, because like I didn't want to hear it, and it would have been hard for me to not hear
the criticism.
Correct. I didn't want to hear the criticism if they had any, just because I felt like it would have been harder for me to go through with the names. And like a shower theme color is a little bit more public, so you can't like keep it a secret per se. But people are going to say things always, and just to keep your course and focus on what you want for the most part, and you'll be good to go.
Yeah. And also, like, I think this is a kind of a separate point. Like, I don't think you should be worrying about coloring or theming a baby shower based on your other kids. Like,
no, it's not. She's pregnant with boy-girl twins. So she was saying,
oh, I'm sorry.
She's saying that like, if she did like a pink theme, like a more girly theme, people would think that she was favoring.
Yeah. Different. Okay. Different. Yeah. I it's not the right question then, but just to finish thank you for correcting me. To finish my point, if you already have kids and you're expecting more, right? And you're worried like, oh, is the boy going to feel marginalized, excluded, whatever, because the party's all pink and he's a boy? I would say like your kids should probably be brought up to know that we celebrate other people and them at different times, right? So like, just because they're a boy or they would prefer dinosaurs or blue or whatever else, and they're attending the party's not in honor of them, right? So it's not, you don't have to alter the course because of your other kids. We just need to be equally celebrating them.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's not.
I know it's not the question that's being asked.
Yeah, but no, totally. And I think it's important to learn to celebrate others.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening to today's episode on...
Don't mix up showers and shower curtains. That's terrible. Don't do it.
On the Raising Boys versus Girls. We hope you liked it. If you have anything you want to say to us about the episode, feel free to send us a DM on Instagram, boygirlmom.com, or slip us an email at hello@boygirlmom.com. And yeah, send us any recommendations or requests for topics, or if there's anybody specific you want to interview, or if you want us to interview you, we would love to.
Yeah. Have an awesome day.
Yeah. Thank you for listening.
BGMAD.
Boy, girl, mom, and dad. Gotta wash those butts together. It's a trip, but we'll guide you through with tips and tricks for boys and girls too.